Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. I have another book to look at today, a new one, series 236, Millennium. Peace, promises, and the day they take our money away. Millennium. Texe Marrs. I've been following Texe Marrs, his website, his stuff he sells, videos, audios, books. I think I made a video on his one book, Monuments, series number 25, I think. Mysterious Monuments, Texe Marrs. So I've been reading this book for the past couple days. So what do you think? You think they're preparing for a new world order, global order? I think most people who do any research or just basically pay attention, the politicians and the religious leaders and others are crying out for a global world order, a global world currency, a global world religion, all coinciding with the biblical prophecy and revelation, etc. Millennium. Peace, promises, and the day they take our money away, Texe Marrs. So let me read from the back of this book. There's a picture of Texe Marrs when he was younger. Apparently a retired Air Force man. What could possibly go wrong? The sparkling 1990s. Gateway to an incredible 7th millennium of man on planet Earth. Think about that. How long is human history? Pretty much after the Great Flood. 7,000 years, plus or minus. People argue about that. Not a long time. And what's happened since then? Some crazy things. Economies are booming. He wrote this book in 1990. Published it. Economies are booming, money flowing, communist regimes in disarray, democracies on the rise. So when I read these sentences, I like to just examine each sentence. It says here, communist regimes in disarray. Isn't that odd? Trying to turn the world into a super social structure controlled communism. And now the capitalists, or the people who run our planet, are screaming for globalism and using threats of global warming, climate change, climate freezing, ice age, whatever, sustainability, terra, economics, pollution, water shortages, pole shifts, threats of World War III, arguments and disputes with China and Russia, etc. Economies failing in Argentina, problems with the money system in Italy and other countries, all over the world. So communist regimes in disarray. It seems like that's not a true viewpoint, because apparently the communists are winning, but they made it look like the Iron Wall had come down and the other half of Germany and all those other people behind the Iron Curtain in the communist countries were now part of the world and free. But it seems like they're pretty much throwing a net all over all of us, trying to turn us into this global world order. In the next sentence, democracies on the rise. So what are democracies? Where everybody votes and chooses a leader or decides on the path of our society. Democracy, rule by the majority, another way to put it, is democracy, rule by the mind-controlled masses who are not paying attention. That's the fact. We can see it out in our city streets, everywhere on TV. Peace is breaking out all over. And the interest in religion is at an all-time high in the 1990s. Not that way now. Politicians promise the best is yet to come. What could possibly go wrong? The back of this book. Millennium reveals astonishing biblical prophecies for our day. Will the coming United States of Europe, the EU, pave the way for the Antichrist? So they don't want to just consolidate all those countries in Europe into an EU. They have plans for one global world order. Think divided into 7 or 10 different segments, pieces of property like North America versus South America versus Africa. There's 3. Europe could probably constitute a couple. There's maps on the internet. You can look this up. And apparently they'll have all these portions, these 10 different areas. They won't be separate countries, but separate entities, but they will be competing with each other. And if you don't compete and work for cheap and use very few resources, then you'll be punished, like the Hunger Games movie. So it seems. Austerity. Sustainability. Is a reunited and arrogant Germany about to produce a monstrous new Hitler or a Fourth Reich? Will they take our money away and issue new currency as financial panic grips? America and economic disaster plunges the nation into dark depression. Could mounting a global catastrophe and international crisis cause people everywhere to cry out for a world government? And that's what they'll do. They'll continue all these crazy things that's going on, bringing it all about, and people will get hysterical, like that one lady on TV who said we need to take the guns away after her son got killed out there at some park in California. And crazy enough, he was at the shooting location in Las Vegas. So I thought there was something suspicious about that. But if you watch videos by other researchers, you'll find there's something suspicious about a lot of things. Is there a mysterious conspiracy by false Christ and religious cults to set up a one-world religion? And most important, will Jesus himself return in the next few years to establish his glorious millennial kingdom? So what do you think? Are there some disastrous things looming in our future? What will they do to bring about the biblical prophecy, this global world order, this global revolution, this global martial law, this global destruction, nuclear holocaust, world revolution, people fighting each other? A lot of the people in the New Age satanic Lucifer side, and a lot of people sticking with the family values and Christianity and the Islam religion side. Will they put the evil against the good worldwide? Will everybody be deceived? Will China be economically destroyed and rile up that world with 1 billion people and attack the rest of us? Will Russia release nuclear weapons, as they say in the news? I don't make this stuff up. We've all heard it. Albert Pike in 1880 said there would be 3 world wars required to bring about the global world order. And he was into the mystery religion. Apparently he was communicating with some hidden masters from the invisible reality. And if you've been watching my videos, you know there are 2 major components to my research, categorizing into 2 different things. Books about history, as we know it, the physical reality, and books about spirits and psychics, and all this stuff from the biblical stories to aliens, UFOs, some kind of an interdimensional component, an invisible reality. However you want to describe it. So you got the invisible reality acting with the physical reality. What are we to believe? A lot of people don't want to acknowledge that the spiritual reality is real. And the Bible talks about demons and fallen angels and all this other material from channelers and psychics and mediums and ghosts and spirits and demons, gray aliens and reptilians, conspiracy to bring about a global world order, having everything to do with the money supply. Apparently the secret societies have been controlling the money supply of the countries all over the world for hundreds of years. All right, I'm going to read from the book here. As you are aware, if you've been watching my videos, I pre-read the material. I highlight things I think are interesting. I like to read from a couple selected pages and have some commentary. Page 142. Biblical prophecy and the control of money. Bible prophecy indicates that all of society will be controlled in the last days through the money and currency system. We've all heard these things about digital money and Bitcoin and new money, cashless society, global currency. The world of the Great Tribulation will be presided over by the lords of money, using electronic systems to direct and control all commerce and business. And if you've been paying attention, you know from my videos, and I'm sure you can look it up for yourself and verify it, but they've been microchipping children since 2012 and 13 in California, Texas, and Florida. And they tell the parents, if you don't have your child microchipped, you won't be able to go have the school lunch or use the school library and all of this. So it's a very subtle, slow process, but they're getting everybody tagged, and a lot of us carry around cell phones and other devices. So they pretty much got us with the credit cards in our wallets with the microchip on them, smart TVs, smartphones, facial recognition. We're all being computerized. We're all being monitored. The data is being compiled. They have a file on every one of us. They have these AI, artificial intelligence systems that does things and makes decisions on its own. We've all seen those Echo devices or Google devices. And so when they do turn up the threat level, when they come for some kind of world event or world revolution or whatever, bring us some kind of antichrist, and of course you're going to have a lot of people resisting it, they're going to have all those installed microwave transmission systems and computers, and it's all weaponized and controlling. Like the biblical prophecy, if you don't have the mark of the beast, you won't be able to buy or sell. It seems like it's coming, and I don't think a lot of people can actually deny it, that it isn't something you can physically see going on in our daily lives, and the politicians are exclaiming these things, saying these words, and the religious leaders. So the world of the Great Tribulation will be presided over by the lords of money using electronic systems to direct and control all commerce and business. In turn, they will be required to pledge their allegiance to the one man selected to head the global political and economic system, the world leader. Revelation 13, 16 through 17. Revelation 13, 16 through 17. So we know there's a prophesied Antichrist coming. From my voluminous research, I can say with authority that the process of consolidation of our banks and the destruction of the neighborhood banking system is already far advanced. In fact, I agree with one expert who has observed. He says, I believe every bank in a technical sense is in trouble. None of them are solvent. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC, is the only thing that is propping them up. and they have enough money to protect only 1% of all of the deposits. So I'm not a financial or economic advisor or consultant, but I would certainly tell people, put your money in something solid. Go buy some land or a house, or fill up a little warehouse shed with $10,000 worth of toothpaste and toilet paper and other necessities people will need. That'll be more important than that paper money that'll be worthless. Imagine having $1,000 of toothpaste stockpiled, $1,000 worth of toilet paper, all kinds of things. Salt, pepper, spices. I'm sure anybody can think of stuff that wouldn't be very expensive. Those things will be worth their weight in gold. Imagine somebody with gold coins wanting some of that stuff, needing it. You don't have change for the gold coin, so they'll have to just give you the gold coin for. Just saying, you can see some humor and logic in all this and some ironies. But the money, if they collapse the system, will be worthless. What is important for you to realize is that the handful of American megabanks have themselves already become the financial lackeys of foreigners who have no love for the American capitalist system, and as a matter of fact, despise our nation and its way of life. Remember, no longer is the United States the big kid on the block in terms of the global marketplace. And make no mistake about it, they do control the Federal Reserve and the stock market and everything else, house prices, mortgages, interest rates. So if they're taking this system up and up like house prices are now, or the stock market is now, the higher they go, the much harder it's going to fall. I'd like to be wrong on this, but we've already seen some incidences in the past. 2008, banks too big to fall. They gave those banks billions and billions of dollars. 911. AIG paid off the insurance on the Twin Towers, a couple billion each. Apparently, it was an inside job involving Israel and the globalist world order elites. And apparently those buildings, because of the earlier bombing in the lobby years earlier, it was determined that the buildings were deteriorating and going to fall on their own because of faulty construction materials, including tons of asbestos in the buildings. So it was said that they couldn't get building insurance and that the buildings were going to fall on their own. And they would have had to have been taken down by scaffolding at about $2 billion for each building. Insurance companies don't cover faulty construction or faulty design. So the owners would have had to spend $2 billion for each building. So how convenient was it for them to do what they did? And then they wind up getting $2 billion each from AIG and other insurance companies. And the rest of us in the world take the hit with the 2008 stock market collapse, and the banks that are too big to fail. Connect the dots. AIG. The trillions of dollars missing, as Donald Rumsfeld said days before 9/11, the day before 9/11. And then, of course, Prime Minister Sharon of Israel said 10 or 11 days after 9/11 in a heated argument in his Congress, "Don't worry about America. We control America. The Americans know it." So who do you suppose was involved in 9/11? Even Webster Tarpley's book, 9/11 Synthetic Terror, connects all the dots, as well as many other books and videos and people and websites. I think Webster Tarpley's book, series number 2 in my series, or series 11, Freemasonry and Satanism. Go watch Webster Tarpley, 9/11 Synthetic Terror video I made. I need to relook at that book and make another video. There's so much material in that book. Remember, no longer is the United States the big kid on the block in terms of the global marketplace. What's more, the lords of money in Germany, Japan, Brussels, Paris, Geneva, and Basel, aided by their American accomplices, are able to manipulate our financial system, including the Federal Reserve, as if the American institutions were puppets on a string. So believe me, that's why the stock market is so high right now, or housing prices are so high right now. They're feeding this system so that it does grow and grow and grow. So when they collapse the system and people can no longer afford the mortgage payments on all the money they've borrowed at great prices, everything will collapse. And I think it'll be intentional, and it's planned, like 9/11, like World War I, like World War II, and all these other assassinations and countries that were overthrown and destroyed. I don't think a lot of people can argue with these points, but it is something mentally difficult to deal with. But we better deal with it now than later, sooner than later. And not knowing what's going on when it starts to go on, people will join one side or the other and rioting through the streets or running in fear, jumping in their car with the family, fleeing across the country, winding up in big lines on the interstate, moving in nowhere. It's all planned. We are in debt up to our necks to the global money men. In the Houston Chronicle not long ago, the financial pages ran a series of special articles reporting on the economic summit held in that city by the Group of Seven, the leaders of the top 7 Western nations. One of the writers asked a question that was especially poignant to our situation today. What is it like being powerless in an economic world where all the decisions are made by the World Bank, the International Money Fund, and the huge trading partners? So the politicians pretty much are at the control of these international banksters, and apparently at the control of the corporations. And even Texe Marrs sent me a letter once that the CEOs of all these worldwide corporations were generally Jewish men. I found that hard to believe, and I went and looked it up, and he was right. Some of the stuff we just don't want to accept, but it is what it is. The evidence is indisputable that this nation's central bank, the Federal Reserve, is sold out to the globalists. So they control the Federal Reserve, they control the stock market, they control everything. They're preparing, it seems, with all these technologies to contain a runaway society when it collapses. Surveillance systems, weaponized microwave transmission systems, AI, artificial intelligence systems to make decisions, like they had all those troops and people in 2015, Jade Helm 2015, going door to door, doing pretend situations like martial law, the Boston bombing, going door to door, checking for people for weapons. They've been doing this, and they're getting their system perfected and ready. Are we people ready? Where's your mind? Is your mind right? Do you know who and what you are? I believe we're spiritual beings in these biological bodies. In the Bible, it says don't have fear or worry when you see all these things taking place. Trust in God. In my case, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus. In the Bible, it says, if you believe in Jesus, you'll be saved. So apparently, when you leave planet Earth, spiritually, you're going one way or the other. If there's only 2 ways to go. The higher heavenly realm or the underworld. So maybe it's true that Earth is a prison planet now, and all of this is an education and some kind of school or test. So it really doesn't matter about us on Earth. Nobody gets off planet Earth alive. It matters what we do and how we think. If the real reality is the spiritual reality, we need to remember that. And I believe it is, from my many years of research, and the Bible, and so much more. People listen to channeled material, believe in astrology, and the alignment of planets, and the influences, and time travel or gray aliens or reptilians or demons or ghosts. If you embrace any of that, you have to see that there is a spiritual reality. The U.S. battleship Philadelphia experiment, where they put microwave transmitters all over the ship, and apparently it moved in time, it disappeared. And a lot of other evidence, whales popping up in a field in Kansas, some kind of electromagnetic vortex, etc., etc. Psychics looking forward and prophesizing or looking back in history. Edgar Casey. I made a lot of videos on these topics. The government having remote viewing. So my point is, there just seems to be a significant amount of evidence. People dying and coming back to life after death experiences, even children, describing the invisible reality. So like I said, it seems like you can't deny it. And I think it is a strong component of what they're planning to do on planet Earth, as is prophesied in Revelation, the last book in the New Testament, and prophesied in many other places in the Bible, and other sources of other cultures, ancient monuments and history, and tribes, indigenous peoples. The Machu Picchu lines, those big lines of seemingly like animals you can only see from a plane, and the monuments all over the earth. The Great Flood that all the indigenous tribes all over the world mention, and even that some other entities helped some of them go underground or in caves to survive the Great Flood. So there was a civilization prior to 7,000 years ago, before the Great Flood. A lot of people talk about Atlantis. So if all this is what's going on and what's prophesied to happen, I suspect it's going to happen. And if the Bible says to have no fear and to watch it like you're on the outside looking at it, don't be a part of it. Don't have the fear. That's easier said than done, I suspect. I guess if it does happen in my lifetime, I'll have to pay attention to how I react. I just know you can't run anywhere. I've learned that in the past 10 years. There's nowhere to go. The mountains aren't going to save you. They'll have all the microwave transmitters there. And if you do make it somewhere, there'll be people that are starving that'll be coming to get you and whatever you have. Shooting people is not the answer. Killing people to defend yourself and a few cans of beans is not the answer. You're a spiritual being. You're going to leave this planet. You can just see you showing up, making a little humor here, at the pearly gates. And St. Peter says, well, I'm looking at your information here, and it looks like you killed a bunch of people just before you died, trying to protect some cans of beans and some water. Was it worth it? Just an interesting way of looking at things. So what's going to happen is going to happen, and I believe if enough people wake up, we can probably prevent the evil forces from succeeding. The evidence is indisputable that this nation's central bank, the Federal Reserve, is sold out to the globalists. This is Texe Marrs in 1990. Notably, Lenin, the founder of the communist Russia, once said, "A central bank is 90% of communizing a country." So when they took over the Federal Reserve in 1913, 6 months before they started World War I, it was 90% of communizing a country. That's why from 1850 to 1913, when these evil forces did not control the USA money supply, there were 3 or 4 assassinated attempts on US presidents, 2 of them successful, to get control of the USA money supply and create the situations like World War I, World War II, so they could destroy the Ottoman Empire in Turkey, which controlled the Middle East, because they wanted to fulfill prophecy and get the Palestinians land to rebuild the ancient kingdom of Judea. After you've been doing this research for a while, you continually to see the same things pop up in the hundreds of books that I've gone over. In the radiant new international economic order planned for all of us by the elitists, the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States will be merged with and become subservient to an even greater central bank. The World Central Bank will control our Federal Reserve, which is already controlled by the evil forces and causing all kinds of suffering here in the United States and the world. All right, continuing on, page 144. What to look for? The day the dollar dies, what you will see first is that your local bank is suddenly closed. This will be done under the authority of the Monetary Control Act of 1980. Next, you will be informed by the news media that the deposits of all banks have been frozen. It is possible to do this under the Emergency Banking Regulation Number 1, 1961. But not to worry. Within a few days, the banks will reopen, and yes, they will have plenty of new money. In a slick con job attempt, the government will assure you that your new money will be good not only throughout the 50 states plus the territories of the United States of America, but throughout the world, because it is being linked with other currencies. The good news, you will be told, is that there is now an international currency. Yes, it may have differences in design and esoteric symbols from country to country, but remember that little blank space, that white void I mentioned previously. So apparently on this new money, like a lot of buildings you'll see in your downtown area, they have these plaques with nothing on them. I always wondered about that. And I realized they're preparing for the time of the Antichrist, and they will put this Antichrist image, Lucifer, Satan, whatever, on those plaques and on these empty spaces on these dollar bills. And the whole world will be required to pledge allegiance to this Lucifer Antichrist character or be beheaded. They passed some kind of Noahide laws in secret, and they've even purchased guillotines, as I've discovered in my research. And you can go verify this. Please don't believe me. So esoteric symbols from country to country. But remember that little blank space, that white void on the new money I mentioned previously. You will notice in the new currency notes that there is a certain number, symbol, or mark within that space, or a picture of a man. Hold a bill to the light, and there you will see it. This is the sign that is the indicator that this piece of paper will be convertible on the world currency exchanges. It doesn't matter whether you travel to Germany, Canada, Mexico, Jamaica, Brazil, or the United States. Your money will be good, or will it? The next topic mentioned here is houses and autos take the plunge. And we've already seen recently one huge collapse in the housing market. The stock market collapsed in 2008. So how soon will all this happen again? That's the question. It does look like the powers that be, as I've said before, are preparing for some kind of event, weaponizing and microwave transmission systems, 5G, AI, artificial intelligence, facial recognition systems and monitoring systems, surveillance systems. And they're documenting everything about everybody. And I think we're tagged at least 3 different categories: green, yellow, and red. And apparently they intend to take out the red. The yellow maybe will be sent to internment camps or retraining facilities or prisons or labor camps. And the green will be the people that will accept the new Lucifer reality, the new age. And apparently there's a lot of them out there we see. Just saying, that's what it looks like. Houses and autos take the plunge. So Texe Marrs says back in 1990, in addition to the failure of our banks and saving and loans, there is currently a depression in the real estate market. Rising home prices helped fuel consumer spending booms during the 60s and 70s. So I do know housing markets are booming right now in a lot of places, and people are financing those homes at astronomical prices. If we do have a slowdown in the economy, of course, they won't be able to pay those mortgage payments. I think it's all planned. During the 80s, real estate in some markets of the economy, particularly in the Northeast, in New England and in California on the West Coast, continued to skyrocket upward. And of course, we're all aware right now with the seemingly weather control and weather warfare and other advanced technologies like directed energy weapons and laser beams and the dumping of aluminum and barium, which is highly flammable and toxic from the skies, that we seem to be under attack. According to many other people's videos, Dane Wigington, Geoengineering Watch, Lisa Haven, Christopher Green, and so many others. I get on the internet every day, watch a few of these videos, paying attention to what all these people are saying, reading my books, looking at the press releases. But as 1990 rolled around, the sizzle had turned to pop and hiss. A real estate crunch had developed on the East Coast and in New England. And prices on the West Coast of California had begun to stabilize and drop. And I woke up in 2005. Some things were bothering me. I noticed that the housing collapse in 2005 in Germany, in Canada, in California, all over the world. And I said to myself, how can this be happening all over the world? Somebody has to be orchestrating this. And I didn't know, of course, what I know now when I began my research. 2005, my big zero birthday. 2019 is in a few days. It's about almost 15 years I've been at this, making videos going on my 6th year right now. Incredible price increases in homes during prior decades made many Americans feel richer and richer. There are evil forces, quite intelligent, planning all of these things that have been happening. Even the Pokemon chip 30 years ago that we gave our kids. And now a lot of these kids grew up to look like Pokemon characters. Zombies. Monsters. It's all planned. It was by borrowing on their mortgages that many yuppies were able to finance lifestyles far beyond their means. As a result, in the 1980s, American homeowners tripled their consumer debt, doubled their mortgage debt, and halved their savings rates. But with the home prices beginning to spiral downwards in many parts of the country, homeowners are now only beginning to see the desperate financial shape which they are in. I was watching one video today where the speaker was saying that they will crash all these retirement plans and everything else, and the money will be worth nothing. So a lot of that kind of information on the internet does make you wonder and pause with some concern. So a lot of us should be realizing, or thinking about what would we do if something disastrous happened tomorrow. What's your plan? You should have something simple. You can't flee, you can't run anywhere. And biblically speaking, it says don't have fear when these tribulation times come. I guess you're just supposed to watch it. Get out of the way. Don't get involved and run out there and killing people and stuff like that. Just saying. They realize now that this has been a big trap. and they are hopelessly mired in swamps of debt they cannot repay. I recognized all of this in 2005, and I intentionally got myself to a point of zero, not trying to do the 369, but zero debt. I don't have any credit cards. Money I spend with my debit card is money that's in the bank. No mortgages, no truck loans, no nothing. Zippo. Feels better than it felt when I owed money on a mortgage and vehicles and credit cards and all that. Took a little while, but I managed to get everything clean. We have to think. Be smart. As the price of homes also slid, commercial real estate has gone begging. Many American families have begun to realize that the good times could well be at an end. They can no longer depend on the price of their homes going up. This has affected their attitude about other purchases. It is why we see a plunge in auto sales developing. So as times get tough, and this happened a few years ago, I remember going to see a doctor and I say, this recession or whatever you want to call it, is it affecting you? And he said it was a clinic. And he said, yes. People will avoid coming to the hospital or see the doctor because they're short of money. I said, ask the hairdresser the same thing. She said, yes. Everybody would like a nice haircut, but when push comes to shove, they'd rather drink some beer or wine or buy food or something else or gasoline. So there are telltale signs out there when things are getting tough. But I think they're artificially propping everything up right now. I'm not the only one that thinks that. But again, being prepared, having a plan. Do you want to be in a city of 5 or 10 million people when this happens? Can you go someplace else in a more rural area with some family and relocate? A lot of people are retirement age or reaching it. Where do you want to be in those years? Just interesting questions and thoughts we should be thinking. For example, on August 15th, 1990, it was reported that car and truck sales in by U.S. companies, had plunged 21.5% from years ago level. Begged Chrysler chairman Lee Iacocca, somebody start buying something in a hurry. This is an early warning sign of severe economic problems. The more consumers refuse to buy durable goods, that is automobiles, refrigerators, furniture, and other large ticket items, the more a circular situation develops in which these industries are forced to lay off workers because of sagging sales. And of course, we're all in a strange situation these days with the new president, Donald Trump, going on his second year, completing 2 years, but raising the tariffs on goods coming from China and other places, causing them problems. So we have all this tension in the world right now and agitation by the actions of President Donald Trump, which I believe is totally planned. Make no mistake, they want a world revolution. They want World War III. Something big has to happen to bring about this global world order. Then the vicious circle continues as those that are laid off are unable to buy goods. So you can see how people won't be able to pay their mortgages. And so it goes until the nation sinks into depression. You will notice I use the word depression. So it was interesting for me to learn that during the Great Depression in the United States, did you know there was like a Great Depression in countries all over the world? And there were these Illuminati, mystery religion of Babylon, Lucifer, secret societies controlling the banks and everything else. They wanted to have World War II. So they were causing this Great Depression to get the people to go along. I mean, people wanted to change. It was so horrible. And they were willing to believe all the lies and go along with World War II. Even prior to World War I, there was a severe depression. So apparently, prior to these World War events, they crash the economy and make it very difficult for everybody. Like 9/11, that event got everybody in line to believe and accept what the government was doing, attacking and destroying all those countries in the Middle East. And you can look up maps for a greater Israel and see why all this is done. Rather than a milder recession. So Texe Marrs says it's going to be a big depression. And I've been listening to people on the internet recently, this is December 7th, 2018, saying this next depression is going to be like no other, horribly bad. Where are you going to be? And again, fear is not an option. Have some faith in God and belief. Love your fellow man. No matter what happens, your spiritual self is much more important. That's what I believe. And I'm not trying to be a preacher. The reason is that I believe the situation we'll soon find ourselves in will be so desperate, so unbelievably shocking, that even the word depression cannot truly describe its horrible dimensions. Even food, the most necessary resource of all, is not exempt from the effects of the coming depression. And I was reading in the news today that apparently OPEC lowered its daily output of oil so they can control all of these things. So who, what, and why? I showed this document a couple times, so I was reading it a few minutes ago and thought, well, I'll just talk about it again. But prior to World War II, in the New York Times, this page was published in the New York Times newspaper. And if you know anything about law, legalities, when you make public announcements, it sets some kind of legal right in effect. Like if you're getting divorced, you take an advertisement out that I'm no longer responsible for so-and-so's financial expenses, etc., etc. When you're starting a business, you have to take out an ad announcing that you're going to use that name. Northside Bakery, whatever you're going to do. So here they took out an announcement in the newspapers prior to World War II. Listen to this. New World Order pledged to Jews. This is in the New York Times newspaper. This is a legal announcement when you announce it to the world. And it was probably a deal made with the banksters and the leader of the countries because they were entering World War II, and the countries and leaders wanted the support of the international Zionist Jewish banksters, the community, so they would win the war. And they had the same situation develop in World War I with the Balfour Agreement. But at the end of the war, Britain refused to honor its agreement and threaten or destroy Turkey and the Ottoman Empire so that the Jews could get the Palestinians' land to rebuild King Solomon's temple and rebuild the ancient kingdom of Judea. So in the newspaper on October 6th, 1940, the New York Times, page 10, New World Order pledged to Jews. Arthur Greenwood of British War Cabinet sends message of assurance here. Righting of wrongs seen. English rabbi delivers to Dr. S.S. Wise new statement on question after war. So they're talking about the end of World War II prior to the war, or the war has just started. In the first public declaration on the Jewish question since the outbreak of the war, Arthur Greenwood, member without portfolio in the British War Cabinet, assured the Jews of the United States that when victory was achieved, an effort would be made to found a new world order based on the ideas of justice and peace. Mr. Greenwood, who is deputy leader of the British Labour Party, declared that in the New World, the conscience of civilized humanity would demand that the wrongs suffered by the Jewish people in so many countries should be righted. So remember, the Jews were in something called a diaspora with no homeland for 2,000 years since Jesus' time. All this is connected. He added that after the war, the opportunity would be given to Jews everywhere to make a distinctive and constructive contribution to the rebuilding of the world. So they have to destroy the world. This was prior to World War, or the beginning of World War II. The message was delivered last week to Dr. Stephen S. Wise, chairman of the Executive Committee of the World Jewish Congress, by Rabbi Maurice Persiwig, chairman of the British section of the Congress. Rabbi Persiwig arrived from England Monday evening. Intention to right wrongs. Comparing the statement with the Balfour Declaration of 1917. So they had this agreement in 1917 that if the Jews supported Britain, because Britain was losing World War I, that at the end of the war, Britain would help the Jews get the Palestinians land to create the State of Israel, and that encompassed even more land called Greater Israel. So there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, and it has something to do with biblical prophecy and a coming Antichrist. Dr. Wise declared that in a sense it had wider and further reaching implications as it dealt with the status of Jews throughout the world. So is it anti-Semitic for me to acknowledge that this agreement has been made between the world leaders, that the world would be given to the Jews after World War II? And the Bolshevik Jews invaded Russia and created the Communist Party, and that spread around to a lot of the world, China, etc., and many other nations. And we had the Cold War, which I believe was all a false flag to prepare for today, where we are, and the events in the last 10, 15 years, and more. Building this global world order, preparing for the age of Aquarius, and the trying to rid the memory of humanity of Jesus Christ and Christianity, and probably Islam and the Islamic religion, and maybe even the people in China or India. Who knows who will be destroyed in World War III, or whatever disaster befalls the planet with all these technical weapons they have. And the use of, apparently, witchcraft and magic, this mystery religion. He said that Greenwood's message could be interpreted as a statement of England's firm intention to help right the wrongs which Jews have suffered, continue to suffer today because of Hitler's disorder and lawlessness. Mr. Greenwood, sending the Jews of America a message of encouragement and warm wishes, wrote, "The tragic fate of the Jewish victims of Nazi tyranny has, as you know, filled us with deep emotion." So there wasn't any Holocaust at this point. And there were ads taken out in papers all over the world that 6 million Jews were in danger prior to World War II. And this agreement here was October 6, 1940, at the beginning of or prior to World War II. This was the thinking going on prior to the war ever happening. And of course they wrote that one book, Germany Must Perish, and so many other books I've gone over. So I'll look at this document again in another video. I think it's that important, but I do want to get back to the book. Millennium, Peace, Promises, and the Day They Take the Money Away. Texe Marrs. Continuing on, I started this video yesterday, December 7th, Friday, 2018. Today is December 8th, Saturday. We're getting our first snow storm here in the mountains of North Carolina. I've been reading a couple other books like I always do at the same time, but yesterday one of you left me a comment and asked me what I thought about this book. Who is Esau? Edom by Charles Wiseman. So I've been reading it all day. Went online and found it free PDF. Very interesting story about who these characters are. Like it says in Revelation, Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. Something about Esau and Jacob, descendants of Abraham, descendants of Noah, who are descendants of Adam and Eve. And apparently there was a divide with the two sons of Abraham, Esau and Jacob. And one of them followed the godly path, and the other one was anti-God, Esau. And apparently those are the people mentioned in the Revelation, Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. And they've embraced this Zionism political direction, and it's part of who's trying to bring us this global world order, and some would argue they've already done it. So again, fulfilling biblical prophecy, and the author, Charles Wiseman, says it's all part of God's plan. All the world's a stage. So I'm up to about page 50 in this book. And it is fascinating. Another book PDF I've been reading from Major Jordan's diaries. And he was working for the United Nations, an officer. They promoted him to major. Procurement officer to supply the Russians at the beginning of World War II, 1940, with all the necessities for fighting a war. Military equipment, supplies, foods, chemicals, everything. Quite a horrific story, and even a perplexing one if a person thinks about it, because who was in control of Russia in 1940? The Bolshevik Jews, aided by the political Zionist Illuminati, people into a satanic, Luciferic, mystery Babylonian religion, invaded Russia in 1917, days after World War I was finished, when Russia was caught off guard and weakened. Espionage, secrecy. Nobody saw it coming. And that's the world we're living in today. Apparently history repeats itself. And nobody sees these things coming, although there's plenty of evidence if you want to look into it and think about it and rationalize it. Use your God-given brain and be concerned about it. But then again, you've got two groups of people on the planet. The followers of Jacob, Jesus, Christianity, maybe even the Islam, Mohammeds, and other people, whether they be Hindus or Buddhist, people who want normalcy and family values and reject the evil demonic sides. All the religions have demons, even Shiva, the goddess of destruction, and Lucifer, Satan, Moloch, Ra, Osiris, Set, Isis, Horus, all these beings, who's benevolent and with God or God, and who's malevolent, evil against God. Apparently it's all real. So I've been reading those two PDFs, and I will be making videos on them almost immediately. But in the meantime, I'm going to get back to this book, which is a fascinating story. Millennium. Peace, promises, and the day they take our money away. So what is a millennium? Isn't that 1,000 years? And what is this? A new age? The age of Aquarius? 12 ages? So they say. But actually there's 13 celestial astrological signs. Orpheus, the serpent. Why did they leave that out? And why maybe are they bringing it back? The serpent, the reptilian being. A lot of mysteries, a lot of questions. So I continue to read these books and have these videos I make and throw in my 2 cents. Not trying to convince everybody to believe my point of view. I think it would benefit all of us if we did look into this and did talk about it rationally and take some courageous steps to step up and try to stop the evil forces from destroying what I believed growing up was a beautiful world. But then I see all these false flags, bombing, shootings, and polluting the air and the water and the food, even the human bodies, and killing insects, bees, and animals, and fish, and radiation. Irresponsible and criminal behavior is off the chart. Manipulating the money supply in the stock market and the medical industry, education industry, and all of the industries, creating these mega marts and entities that are too big to fail. Who's behind all this and why? I've got some new book reviews on those 2 books, plus others I'm reading at the same time, of course. Plus I'm re-releasing all the other videos. I think I'll be doing that every 2 or 2.5 years because there's so many, maybe every 2 years. And it allows me to release something at 10 o'clock in the morning each day, if you've been noticing, if you're a subscriber, and 8 p.m. And if anybody has a real huge problem with those times, say so. And if enough people have a problem, then I'll change it. Otherwise than that, it seems to be 2 good times for the video release. Because, of course, you can go watch them whenever you want. And I also kind of designate the new videos I release at those times, 10 o'clock and 8 p.m., but in the format of a premiere release where we can all comment back and forth, and you guys can comment together and leave your information. And that's where I got the information, Who is Esau Edom by Charles Wiseman. One of you left a comment on one of my newly released videos, and I go look these things up. So I would say probably right now 20-25% of what I work on and videos and information I release comes from the contributions by the commenters and viewers of my videos. Thank you. All right, back to the book. Will starvation soon plague America and the globe? And again, my opinion is none of what seems to be coming needs to happen. We can stop it. But what will people do? Will they step up? During the late 70s and early 80s, there was a lot of ruckus about the plight of the farmers. You may recall that country singer Willie Nelson held a number of farm aid concerts attempting to raise money to keep the family farmer from going belly up. So like I said, outside forces put them out of business. They control the country and the money supply. And now big corporations provide 90% of our food. And as we all know, they're providing genetically modified foods and all kinds of herbicides and pesticides on the foods. So it's seriously detrimental to our health. Those are the facts. Today, no one talks much about the farmers. What did happen to the family farmer? The guy who had only a few dozen acres. Why is the media silent? Well, that could be rhetorical. We know why the media is silent. The media is owned by these Illuminati, Zionist, Satanist, Illuminati people pursuing a global world order as mentioned in the Bible and all these other books. Evil is in control. The sad news is that most of the small farmers have left the farm and their families are now living in poverty. Cost of production forced most out of business. Farmers were forced to borrow huge sums of capital to operate, and they built up insurmountable interest payments to the mega banks. As many as 85% of North American farmers have gone bankrupt in the last 15 years. And Texe Marrs wrote this book in 1990. So the whole situation is certainly exacerbated since then. Exacerbated. Much worse. That means they can turn it all off anytime they want. Food shortages, toxins in the foods, poisons, raise the prices. The shocking facts are that these farmers' land holdings were taken over by the government and the mega banks and sold off to what can be called super farmers or agribusinessmen. These are defined as the producers with greater than 500,000, $500,000, in gross income. These wealthy agricultural combines produce the vast majority of food today. And of course we have the migration of people in Central and South America coming up here to work, sometimes virtually for slave labors, but wages, but much better wages than they pay them in Central and South America. Why is that? It's because these elitists, Zionist, Illuminati, Satanists, Luciferians, pursuing a global world order, have taken over those third world countries years ago, assassinated a lot of presidents down there, and killed a lot of the citizens. FYI. But most of us know that, but what do we really care? What do we do? What do we say? What do we think? What do we pray for? Do you do any of those things? Sadly, including me, no, we didn't. And probably still today, no, we don't. I do now, because I woke up. Most are owned by rich men who do not personally work the land. This corporate takeover of American farms by the rich means that agriculture is now in the hands of just a few. The production and distribution of food has gradually been placed in the hands of the same men who control our money supply. This is frightening. It means that artificial shortages can be created instantly. There is almost an OPEC-type cartel operating in agriculture today. This is alarming. Remember when I first moved here to the mountains of North Carolina, I lived near another city called Waynesville. And a lot of the local young men were making a ruckus at the one of the city council meetings, complaining that all of the land had been purchased by the huge corporations, investors. But prior to that, they had this concept that's quite popular and has been throughout American history, probably world history, but that people would rent the land and grow crops and make some money, or make an agreement to share some of the money they got from the crops. So owners would let other people farm their land. When the corporations purchased all the land, they refused to allow these working young men, middle-aged, even older men, continue to do what they had done for centuries. Why is that? That's concerning. And those people, what do they grow? Watermelons or corn or whatever, They would put their sweat and money into that, tilling the soil, planting the seeds, taking care of the crop, and then harvesting it and going and selling it and maybe making $20,000, $30,000, paying their expenses, setting some money aside for next year's seeds and work, and have the rest of it to live on. It was a method that worked, but they took that away. Probably all over the country. Why is that? A global food crisis could be just around the corner with fast escalating prices and total runaway inflation. And also, we have all recently, if you've been paying attention to the news, they had the lettuce salmonella scare, then they had the beef salmonella scare. So I just wonder, when they do this, is it intentional and more preparation for disastrous activities in the future to bring everything to its knees, crush our existing reality, to bring about the global world order by these evil entities? Just saying, we need to think, see, and hear. I think it says in the Bible, those who have eyes but do not see. Those who hear have ears but do not hear. And that seems to apply to a lot of us these days. Even the desperately poor third world nations such as Ethiopia, Chad, Vietnam, and Peru are feeding the brute of the food crisis. So this is happening all over the world. People down in Central South America, where they've turned into huge food production areas, farming and orchard, they pay those people seriously, poorly. And then they ship all that food to the United States and other places and charge a good amount of money. They're making a fortune. I feel sorry for the people in Brazil and other countries, Mexico, tomatoes and fruit and everything else. And there's been wars fought over this, these big corporations. So where do you think this is going to take us in the future, if this is what they've done in the past? And they haven't obtained their world global order yet. Doesn't take a genius to say, oh my, this could be quite terrible. As we move into the 1990s, news reports indicate that world food aid shipments are at their lowest volume since 1975 and 76, despite millions more people in dire straits. So if you don't have the money, you're not going to get the food. If the countries that have the money don't do what the World Bank and these elite want, like Venezuela right now, or maybe even Argentina, then they get boycotted and shut down and wind up in dire straits like the people in Venezuela. A country with more oil than any other country in the world, more gold than any other country in the world, Venezuela. Beautiful country, great mountains, waterfalls, resources, everything. But the World Banksters don't have control, so they're bringing all this chaos and anarchy. Look at all the rioting going on in France right now. We can expect a lot of this because there is preparations for some kind of world revolution to bring about a global world order by some evil entities trying to fulfill, knowingly or unknowingly, a biblical prophecy. Because I suppose even evil entities want to survive. They are what they are. Their DNA is what their DNA is. Their characteristics are what their characteristics are, what their characteristics have been. They don't want to change or say we're sorry or ask God for forgiveness. What's been going on biblically for a long time apparently has to run its course, and the eventual end, of course, they will lose, and I guess God's plan will be fulfilled. These desperate people include those who live in one of the world's strongest military nations, the Soviet Union. Mikhail Gorbachev, their president, has been forced to go to the United States and other Western nations begging for massive new shipments of food to keep his bankrupt communist government solvent. So isn't that crazy? The communists invaded Russia, or the Bolshevik Jews, the Zionist, elitist bankster types, and had their revenge, killing 100 million or more, plus or minus people, Christians particularly, and destroying the Christian churches, but not the Jewish temple or the Jewish people. So that was 1917. And so they had that country till 1990 and 1980 and 1940 prior to World War II. So their system did not work. Everything they take over, they eventually destroy. FYI. That's why for 2,000 years, country after country exiled, banished, prosecuted, persecuted, massacred these Jewish peoples wherever they migrated to. A people without a country. Why was that? What was with their characteristics that they refused to actually want to work with their hands and build anything, and they wanted to live off of other people? And this is not me saying this. This is this book. This is the books I've been reading. Who is Esau and Edom? Charles Wiseman. This is Henry Ford's books. The Jewish Problem. The Dearborn Independent newspaper books I've been going over. This is Henry McCall. This is Rabbi Marvin Antelman. Benjamin Friedman. So elite Jewish people who are on the God side have been trying to warn the rest of us throughout history. Could it be that the leader of the impoverished Soviet Union, with an angry and hungry population on his hands, will someday soon decide to change his nation's economic fortunes for the better by attacking the Middle East and capturing the oil-rich lands of the Arab states? So this book was written in 1990, and of course we've seen what's happened since then. So I guess what he was prophesizing here in this book has come true. 9/11 and all the other attacks on the Middle Eastern countries. Trying to fulfill some kind of prophecy or plan, political Zionism, promising the ancient kingdom of Judea from the Euphrates River in Iraq to the Egyptian Nile. Go look up on your computer Greater Israel, and you'll see all the maps. It's not me. It's the truth. We may as well accept the truth, what is happening. This momentous event will no doubt occur. Well, Texe Marrs, you hit it right on the head in 1990. It has occurred. Why must it happen? Necessity is one reason. Biblical prophecy, however, is the major reason this invasion of the Middle East by the Russian bear is going to happen. So by reading that book, Who is Esau, Edom, Charles Wiseman, again, I'm not a biblical scholar, but I can read and I can reason. But it seems that in this reality, since the Great Flood, the 7,000 plus or minus years of human history and existence, God has had a plan. And remember, we are spiritual beings in these biological bodies, so we all have a part to play in this plan. When we die on this planet, we go back to the spiritual realm. I guess when we get back there, we'll find out what the God's plan was. What was the reasoning behind the 7,000 years of ups and downs in history that we know? interesting thoughts and questions. So continuing on, what else does Texe Marrs have to say in this book? The Great Social Security Fraud. One of the most despicable gimmicks used by the White House and Congress to cover up the huge federal budget deficit is the looting of Social Security Trust Fund. For years, American citizens were told that the Social Security Trust Fund needed shoring up, that the Social Security taxes contributed by each American from wages, salaries, and incomes had to be increased. So we saw a continuing round of increases until now we are figuratively paying out of the nose for Social Security. Unfortunately, and we all know who controls our government and the banking system, unfortunately, this money may very well not be available to many of us when we grow old. The reason why is that at the same time we are told that we needed to shovel more money into Social Security Trust Fund, Congress had opened the back door and was furiously shoveling the money out. Did you know that? Is retired Air Force officer Texe Marrs correct? Author of many books. You can go on his website and see all the books and videos and audios you can purchase. I guess listen to his radio program. Smarter guy than me on these issues. Some of the money being stolen goes for the most abominable purposes. For example, the National Endowment for the Arts, the NEA, was a beneficiary of some $175 million in the 1990 budget. The NEA, National Endowment for the Arts, is the governmental agency that promptly takes our hard-earned tax dollars and uses them to promote obscene art, such as Robert Mapplethorpe's photographs glorifying child sexual abuse and so-called homosexual erotic art. And I was reading that book I mentioned a few minutes ago, Who is Esau Edom? And apparently this religion they plan on bringing us in the global world order with this global religion is some kind of pagan sexual ritual orgy type of religion. Believe it or not. It's the opposite of God's 10 Commandments. The NEA has also given taxpayer grants and monies to artists that have taken a simulated picture of Jesus and submerged it into a vat of urine and called it art. I saw a video about that. These people do grotesque things and they are seriously anti-Christian, anti-God. They plan on having their revenge with God by destroying the people on planet Earth, destroying God's society, family values, Christianity, and apparently the Islamic peoples, and even the Chinese or Indians and people all over the world, Brazilians. So it doesn't matter where you're from, these people are evil and they have evil forces everywhere. There's just a few of them compared to as many of us as there are. All right, one artist was given free money to depict Jesus as a heroin addict. Moreover, NEA money has gone to pornographic striptease artist Annie Sprinkles, who did an art show in New York City in which she stripped completely, and well, you get the picture. It says here in the book. What a national disgrace. Our Social Security taxes have been doubled under President Reagan and Bush. And then they predict these guys as great presidents. They're all puppets for these evil forces. At the same time that millions of dollars are going for obscene, pornographic, ungodly art paid for the courtesy of the local congressman. Have you ever asked your congressmen and senators if they voted funds for the NEA? And a lot of people have probably given up and not written their senator or congressman, thinking there's nothing they can do. But if these people got enough letters, I'll bet there is something we could do. The same thing with the religious leaders of the churches. It seems they've gone over to the dark side too. America's vital signs point to disaster. As we have seen, a mysterious group of men pulling the world's financial strings have already succeeded in driving many banks and savings and loans over the cliff into oblivion. They are fast consolidating their financial and economic empire so that only they will control the printing and distribution of money. They already have new money in the works. They already have new money in the works. And I have some samples of that money to show in this video. Crazy. And are nearly ready to spring it on the American public. At the same time, they have been able to successfully grab hold of the reins of our food production by driving tens of thousands of once proud farmers into bankruptcy and ruin. These men have also engineered a secret takeover of the American industry and real estate. So Texe Marrs wrote this in 1990, and we've seen what happened since then. They're getting ever closer to their goal. They need some huge event like 9/11, Pearl Harbor, etc. to bring the whole system down to its knees. What will they do? What can they do? What are they doing? What have they done? They have devastated the real estate market. First driving up prices to dizzying levels, and then in some areas of the country selling off so fast that prices are spiraling downward. Rock bottom will be reached only when the titles to thousands of commercial properties they lust after fall into the laps of the conspirators. So when they cause the system to collapse, they form these big trusts and they buy up all these properties. Slowly but slowly taking control of everything. No more landowners for we people. We're all renters. And if you are a resistor or don't go along with the Luciferian secret mystery Babylonian religion, it would cut off your ability to buy or spend with the digital currency that's coming into our reality. You won't be able to pay your mortgage payments. They can ruin anybody at any time. Who doesn't believe that? Consider the fact that even the prestigious Rockefeller Center in New York had been sold to the Japanese, and you will understand what I mean. Further aggravating the coming financial crisis, our government has for years borrowed money from foreigners and stolen from Social Security Fund to pay off staggering budget deficits. And what are they taking all this money from our government to do? One, they're probably giving plus or minus $20 billion a year to Israel, who is growing like a weed, controlling much of the world with these Illuminati Zionist types, probably what the Bible and Revelation describes as Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. It appears from this book I'm reading, these Esau, Edom, it's the descendants of Esau, who sold off his inheritance rights, being the firstborn of Abraham, to Jacob, and he wants revenge. All of the above are signs of impending disaster which point to the coming collapse of the money system, the subject we will next examine. So I'm going to show you these money samples I found when I went online and looked up So one thing I looked up was the national deficit. You can do this too. And of course, we've all been told it's off the chart. The national debt and the federal deficit are skyrocketing. Current U.S. federal budget deficit causes affects the balance. National deficit grew 20% last year, partially due to Trump tax decreases. So it's just growing and growing and growing and growing. And of course, in America, we have a huge population of people. Sometimes I get so many documents here on my desk, something gets lost in the pile. But here are these, I looked up new U.S. currencies, and you can do that too. I'll find that search results here in a second. But let me show you what I found. Kind of fascinating. I found two different sources of these samples of monies. You probably haven't seen this stuff before. But here's the $1 bill. That's one side of it. And then another side. George Washington. The $5 bill. Abraham Lincoln. Statue of Liberty. $10 bill. Jefferson. And I did look into these characters. I have some interesting information. The White House on the back of the $10 bill. The $20 bill. John Kennedy. The moon landing. I thought that was odd. $50 bill. Grant. $50 bill. A flag on the back. The $100 bill, Benjamin Franklin. Looks like the Liberty Bell and Philadelphia picture, $100 bill. So that was one source. And then I found another source, the $1 bill. And it gets a little interesting here. George Washington. I've got pictures of him with his Masonic apron. To the Freemasons, George Washington is like God. A lot of people don't know that. Notice the rays coming out from the circle on the top there. Interestingly enough, 13 rays. 13 circles visible. And apparently it has the six-pointed star in the middle, like on the back of the dollar bill. So there are some occult significance to this dollar bill. And the eagle And the eagle is for the Freemasons in moral and dogma, represents Mendes, which is also the name for the devil. Nobody wants to believe that. I don't want to believe that. So I'm sure with a little bit of work, there's probably more occult symbols in there. But this starts out with 13 rays, and notice the rays. That's important, like the rays behind the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill, and the 13 circles, and the 6-pointed star, and the leader of the Freemasons, George Washington, apparently the founder of the United States. And I've learned another thing since I've been doing my research. All these people that they portray as famous characters throughout history, they're members of these organizations. They don't let people that are not members of these organizations get into the spotlight, never mind on the currency. So remember that. When somebody's promoted as a popular and they say great things about them, usually they're members of these secret societies. This mystery religion got initiated and illuminated into the secrets. And it's not the religion of God or Jesus, etc. $5 bill. Abraham Lincoln. Did you know Abraham Lincoln was the leader of the Rosicrucians in America? A lot of things people don't know. The Rosicrucians are like a sister group to the Freemasons. Now, I counted the rays on this particular $5 bill, and there are 12 of them, and it perplexed me because they said there has to be 13 rays. Then it occurred to me that the whore of Babylon, supposedly represented by the Statue of Liberty herself, is one of the rays, would make it 13. Just FYI. Again, I'll bet other people could probably come up with some other occult significances to these. And when we get the real ones in public, and apparently the way they're going to handle that is they're going to crash the system, close all the banks overnight, and tell everybody not to worry, that your money you have, you can bring it in and exchange it for these new currencies. And I'm not saying these are exactly the ones they're going to have. I'm saying these are the ones I found in my search. So they'll say that the existing green money, $1, $5, $10, $20s, $50s, and $100s, will no longer be worth anything. Maybe they'll give us 10 or 15 days. And if you don't turn them in, that's it. So they will know, and apparently this money will probably be trackable, some kind of chip in it, or identification, magnetic wires or something. So nobody will be able to hide any money, and they will know, and you'll have to fill out a form when you make the exchange, and they will know who has what everywhere into the computer system. What do you think of that? They'll say the money we have now will no longer be worth anything. They'll give us a week, 10 days, maybe a month, and they'll know what everything everybody has. And then when it's trackable money, they'll be able to know where it goes. So again, you have the White House with the 13 rays. I counted them. And Jefferson, who apparently was a Freemason. I did some looking into that. So only these people from these secret societies wind up being our top politicians, senators, and representatives. They all are in league with the people seemingly working for a global world order. Very few of them probably are not in cahoots with them. 13 rays coming out of the White House. 13 is a significant satanic number in witchcraft, etc. This one here isn't in blue, it's in pink. And it's ironic because it seems the Freemasons and others, elitists, had this guy, President John Kennedy, assassinated for his famous speech and other activities, saying that secret societies are repugnant to the American way, and I intend to expose them. And apparently the moon landing is a big hoax. They even talk about it on talk shows that they lost all the scientific drawings and specifications, so they can't go back. So there's a lot of evidence that they could never have gone to the moon and that it's all fabricated. And it's just ironic that these two pictures are on the $20 bill with the significance of the assassination of President John Kennedy and the fabrication and hoax of the moon landings. I think they're playing with us, advertising their evil deeds, mocking us, so it seems. Grant. If you look at the Grant, I didn't look into his Freemasonry activities, I probably should have, but I do know there are 13 stripes on that flag if you count from the bottom to the top. So like I said, if we take some time and get some contributions from other people, there's probably other occult significances to even the $50 bill with the Grant. Benjamin Franklin, definitely one of the initiates into the secret societies. And there's the Liberty Bell and 13 rays again. So they always have these beams and rays. You remember George Bush Sr., who recently passed away, talked about the 1,000 points of light and all these symbols they have for corporate logos. Even the Obama logo has the sun rising and the rays. So all this is part of this mystery religion. And Benjamin Franklin is not the character they portrayed him to be. Definitely part of the secret societies and activities, as we all know. But they paint these pictures in a historically positive light and try to make them our heroes, when that's what they are not. So I thought I would just finish this video with a little bit more reading from the page they took out in the New York Times newspaper at the beginning of World War II, October 6, 1940. I read some of it at the beginning of this video. Says here, the tragic fate of the Jewish victims of Nazi tyranny. This is prior to World War II, by the way. And remember, during World War I, the Jewish people in Germany turned traitor on Germany. Germany was winning World War I. But some Jewish elites went to Britain and said, hey, you don't have to give up and lose the war. We can get America into the war. We can supply you with the money. And we can convince all the Jewish people in Germany and the rest of the world to assist us and you. They even dropped leaflets all over Germany from planes telling them about the Balfour Agreement, that they would get the Palestinians land to rebuild the ancient kingdom of Judea, fulfilling prophecy, if they would support Britain. And so during World War I, where all these Jews were living there, many of them had fled Russia because they were being persecuted and prosecuted and policed, something called pogroms, for 100 years during the 1800s and probably before. And for 2,000 years, the Jews were having problems wherever they went. So is the rest of the world all guilty? And these few people who couldn't get along with anybody, and apparently were in league, some of them, to have the Savior Jesus Christ crucified, and controlling the money supply and so much more throughout history, involved in the Kabbalah, witchcraft, magic, alchemy, etc. The tragic fate of the Jewish victims of Nazi tyranny prior to World War II, as you know, filled us with deep emotion. The speeches of responsible statesmen in Parliament and in the League of Nations during the last 7 years have reflected the horror with which the people of this country have viewed the Nazi relapse into barbarism. Nazi relapse. So who were really the evil forces during World War I? Was it Germany? From my research, the answer is no. But Germany refused to follow the bidding of the Zionists and crush the Turkey and the Ottoman Empire so they could get the Palestinians' land, so they turned to Britain. The British government sought again to secure some amelioration of the lot of persecuted Jewry both in Germany itself and in the countries which were infected by the Nazi doctrine of racial hatred. Nazi, of course, means nationalism, and the people pursuing the global world order right now abhor, they hate nationalism. So anybody in the United States who wants to be pro-America, pro-patriot, would be accused of being a Nazi. FYI. And they've been doing it. It's been in the news. Today, the same sinister power which has trumpeted on its own defenseless minorities and by fraud and force has temporarily robbed many small peoples of their independence and has challenged the last stronghold of the liberty in Europe, the New World Order forecast. When we have achieved victory, and we assuredly shall, the nations will have the opportunity of establishing a new world order. This is before World War II. Based on the ideals of justice and peace. And remember, this was published in the elite-owned newspaper. So they can write any words they want to, embellish and sugarcoat them. But do you believe them? Did you see these money samples? Have you been paying attention to history? You see the signs and hear the words that they want a global world order? And they're blaming us for what they call global warming, when apparently right now some areas have had more snowfall than they've ever had in recorded history. Why is that? It's colder now in some of these Texas counties, South Arkansas, whatever, with this snowstorm going through today, December 8th. Watch the news. In such a world, it is our confident hope that the conscience of civilized humanity would demand that the wrongs suffered by the Jewish people in so many countries should be righted. And I am reading Who is Esau, Edom, Charles Wiseman, and I will be making a video. And I made videos on many other books exposing these people into this mystery Babylon religion, anti-God, anti-Christian peoples, with this plan for taking over the world. Global world order. Infiltrating all the countries, taking over the money supplies. A lot of people know this, but they think there's nothing they can do about it. They're afraid to talk about it. In the rebuilding of civilized society after the war, so prior to World War II, they're already talking about rebuilding the world. There should and will be a real opportunity for Jews everywhere to make a distinctive and constructive contribution, and all men of goodwill must assuredly hope that in a new Europe, the Jewish people, in whatever country they may live, will have freedom and full equality before the law and with every other citizen. And remember, it was the Jews throughout history who refused to assimilate with everybody else. They usually found some corner in the city and formed some kind of ghetto. That was their choice. Country after country wanted them to join the rest of us. In an interview at the Hotel Astor, Rabbi Persling declared he was certain, Mr. Greenwood speaks for England, there is a clear realization, he added, that freedom and emancipation for the Jewish people are tied up with the emancipation and freedom for the people everywhere. The message, Rabbi Persling remarked, was the subject of earnest consideration by the British government. This is a declaration in behalf of the whole world, he observed. Here the British government expressed clearly what it hopes will take place after the war is won. And remember, these people controlled even the British banking system, the Italian banking system, the Russian banking system, probably. They did control Russia. The German banking system, clearly. Spanish banking, Spain banking system, probably all over the world. The United States banking system since 1913. So they control all the politicians. Is there any doubt in anybody's mind, because of this page released in the newspaper and all these other documents and books I've gone over, who is behind this new world order, global world order? Does anybody believe it's a good thing? And if we can see what happened after World War I, when they did have the Bolshevik Jewish invasion into Russia, and they exacted revenge by killing almost 100 million people, plus or minus, they say, over 15 years. That's something like an iron curtain and a blackout on the country. Meanwhile, prior to World War II, these same people who were killing 100 million people had somehow had some agreement with the United States government and the governments of the world while they were killing 100 million people who had just done it when reading this book. From Major Jordan's diaries. It's crazy information I'm reading. But anyways, these Jewish Russian people, prior to and during World War II, were pretty much dictating to the United States what they wanted and what they got. Supplies, food, aircraft, billions and billions of dollars. And they had sided with the U.S. and Britain and the Allies, and they were clearly the communists. They were the real enemy. Germany was targeted again. Makes you wonder if Germany will be targeted the third time. What's going to go down with the World Revolution or World War III or Armageddon, nuclear holocaust, all these things they threaten us with? So anyways, thank you for watching my video. Leave a comment, give me a thumbs up. What do you think? And have hope. Don't have fear. Pray to God. Get your mind right what you believe. The Luciferic satanic forces and all the people who are wearing symbols like that, or people who want to believe in Jesus and God and family values. Each one is in this battle. This is what the world revolution is going to be about. Which one is the God for the Jewish people? That would be the Luciferic New Age philosophy. So the opposition would be the Christians and other people in the Islamic peoples, and probably a lot of decent people in Hindu and Buddhism and other indigenous peoples, Mayans and Peruvians and American Indians. It's a battle between good and evil, so it seems. Something bigger than most of us can fathom. But I'm reading these books and other books, and if I continue doing this, and maybe we can get our minds straight and see it for what it is. This physical reality is having some connection with the invisible reality, whether it is the Kabbalah Sephirot tree with the spheres of the underworld or the spheres of the heavenly world. What is witchcraft and magic and all these Kabbalistic and satanic symbols during Emmys and Grammys and Super Bowl halftime shows and Olympic openings and tunnel openings and all of that? Eurovision in Europe, like American Idol program, where Conchita Wurst wins the singing contest, singing the song, The Phoenix Rising, which has the words in it, "You Can't Stop Us," in 2014. Please go look into that. See that the face was like Jesus and the body has a woman with a silky dress. Apparently, the whore of Babylon. That's what this religion is. Like that train car, flatbed at the celebration for the tunnel opening in Switzerland. The people on the car gliding across the audience, the dignitaries and politicians, reporters, they were dressed in skin-tight material, making them appear naked, and they were having a sexual orgy. And that's the religion of this pagan mystery of Babylon religion. Apparently, this religion they want to bring to the world, which is an anti-God, anti-Christian religion. And all these materials, all these books, the Bible, everything else, it keeps coming back to the same thing. So even somebody as dense as me can see it. Again, thank you for watching my video. Rick Miracle reporting.